continuing where we left. 3 weeks before. Yes, थोड़ा बड़ा गया हूँ मैं, I admit. But इतना नहीं चलता है. Anyways, now when we started the chapter of evolution last time, the first part that we did was theories for origin of life. Now under theories for origin of life, we studied 5 points. First was theory of special creation, जिसमें 3 points थे, right? That organisms have been created as such, जैसे है वैसे ही create किया गया है. The diversity was always the same and will always remain the same. And third, that the earth is 4,000 years old, right? ये 3 points were there in the theory of special creation. Then was all-time favorite theory of panspermia, life coming from outer space. Greek time pass. Third was the theory of spontaneous generation or abiiogenesis, right? Which was disproved by Louis Pasteur. वो flask वाला experiment. उसमें the broth used was killed yeast, and Louis Pasteur came to a conclusion that life cannot come from non-living matter; it has to come from pre-existing life. But the answer that this theory could not give was where has the first life come from. So उसके लिए attempt किया Oparin and Haldane का theory, right, which suggested that first life has come from abiogenesis, from chemical evolution, right? It is all inorganic elements under forces, right? UV rays, volcanic eruption, ये सब forces के अंदर they have come together to form the organic molecules. वो भी organic molecules, how they have become a self-duplicating structure, there is no proof or there is no explanation for that, right? And इसको experimental support मिला Miller-Urey से, the entire experiment done, ठीक है? Which made the gases, the force was provided by the electrodes which are inserted, it was allowed to run. The gases were allowed to undergo condensation and collected in a trap, wherein amino acids were found in the water, right? So थोड़ा सा experimental support मिला, and then the theory was more or less accepted. This was what we had done in the previous session, right? Now today we would like to talk about theories again. Theories of evolution of life. Last time it was about origin of life, how life has evolved, right? Last time का अपना conclusion क्या था कि formation of life, origin of life was preceded by chemical evolution, यानी chemical evolution से first life आया, और जैसे ही first life form हुआ उसके बाद biogenesis ही हुआ है. अब वो biogenesis कैसे हुआ, right? That is the theory of evolution of life now. Now herein we have to study theories from 3 gentlemen. Number 1, Lamarck. Number 2, Darwin. And number 3 is Hugo Davis. Right? You must be recognizing him from the Mendel chapter. Right? One of the 3 people who rediscovered the work of Mendel. Botanist था वो. ठीक है? Now these are the 3 theories that we will have to study from this chapter. अच्छा, one थोड़ा सा word of caution that मैंने notes में rejuggling किया है, right? ये सारे theories जो है वो पूरे book में scattered थे, स्पेशली डार्विन्स थियरी तो पार्ट्स में दिया हुआ है सब जगह पे अलग अलग डिस्कशंस में, जहां पर भी डार्विन्स का थियरी मेंशन है मैंने उसको कोलेट करके एक जगह लेके आया हूं. सो यू विल स्टडी एवरीथिंग अबाउट डार्विन्स थियरी इन वन प्लेस. ठीक है ना? सो इफ यू कोरिलेट दिस फ्रॉम द एनसीईआरटी यू विल फाइंड देम स्कैटर्ड ऑल ओवर द प्लेस. ठीक है? एंड इफ यू आर रेफरिंग टू द एनसीईआरटी इफ यू नॉट एबल टू गेट व्हाट प्लीज डू आस्क. ओके, बिकॉज़ आई जस्ट सॉ दैट एनसीईआरटी वाज ओपन देयर. ओके, ठीक है. ऐसे नहीं, कभी कभी नोट्स भी यूज करा, नोट्स अच्छे हैं. Anyways, now the first theory, even before Darwin, obviously Darwin's is the most accepted theory. Right? Darwin's का theory is the most accepted theory. उसके पहले it was Lamarck who had given this theory. Now, just for the sake of mentioning, I have put theory of special creation here because it is also talking about evolution. Organisms were formed as such, diversity भी same है, तो भी evolution के बारे में बात करी. Just for that, nothing special about it. ये भी सही है. Okay. Now the first theory that we have to study is Lamarck. Now Lamarck's theory is known by the name of theory of use and disuse of organs, or it is also called as inheritance of acquired characters. Now both are alternative names for them. Now see, these are all suppositions. These are all their imagination that this is how evolution could have occurred. Now, Lamarck, he was a French naturalist. A naturalist is somebody who studied everything in nature. Right now, botany, zoology में restriction, they study everything in nature. So it's a vast science. Now he said evolution of life forms had occurred. Now see, this is very important. All these three gentlemen, they were agreeing to the point that evolution हुआ है, but they were differing on the point that evolution कैसे हुआ है. The method of evolution was where they were not agreeing with each other. Lamarck said that it is use and disuse. Darwin said it is natural selection, whereas Hugo de Vries said this mutation. So the mechanism of evolution according to them was different, but they were agreeing on one point that evolution हुआ है. Now Lamarck ने जब ये supposition दिया use and disuse का, he supported this supposition with the help of examples. Now for use of organ, he cited the example of a giraffe. Now he said that giraffe originally was not what we see today. It was a small deer-like structure. So it was living happily ever after. Matlab the food was available on the ground. It did not have to worry more about the food. But due to environmental disturbances, it had to migrate to some other place. तो वो दूसरी जगह पे the food, the leaves, the tree, it was available at a higher stage. Trees पे available था. So in order to reach that, it had to stretch its neck regularly. Right? And its forelimbs. If you see the giraffe, उसके forelimbs are much longer than the hind limbs. So it had to stand, it had to stretch its forelimbs, it had to stretch its neck. Now that was regularly for the foraging of leaf for obtaining food. Now this was used, the vertebrae, the neck was being used consistently. Now this is all a supposition by Lamarck, please. So that led to elongation of the vertebrae of the giraffe. अब ध्यान से सुनना प्लीज. Is this elongation an inborn character or an acquired character? Acquired character because of consistent use. Now Lamarck said that ये जो acquired character है, it gets passed on in the next generation. That's why this theory is also called as inheritance of acquired character. So this elongation, let's say maybe पूरे generation में 1 millimeter उसका elongation हो गया. तो वो 1 millimeter का elongation according to Lamarck gets passed on to the next generation. उसका भी consistent पूरे साल पूरे life में use होगा, तो वो और थोड़ा बढ़ेगा. वो फिर नेक्स्ट जनरेशन में पास होगा। तो ग्रेजुअली डाउन द लाइन इसकी वजह से द नेक गॉट इलोंगेटेड because of consistent use of one particular organ. That is how we see the species of giraffe as it is today. ये पूरा supposition किसका था? Lamarck का था। अच्छा, he gave for disuse also. He gave the example of snakes. He says snakes today is a limbless reptile as we study, but it was not earlier. It had limbs, right? But to escape from predators, from enemies, it had to crawl on the ground in small crevices. So the limbs were not being used, and that gradually led to degeneration of the limbs. It gradually led to degeneration. जैसे use था वैसे disuse था. So according to Lamarck, the consistent use of an organ, the consistent disuse of an organ has led to development of new forms of life. This was a supposition at that time. Okay, तो ये उसका gave the example of giraffe who in an attempt to forage leaf had to adapt by elongation of their necks. As they passed on this acquired character, is the elongation of the neck an acquired character? Right? As they passed on to the succeeding generation, that's why this theory is also called as inheritance of acquired character. Obviously nobody believes in this conjecture anymore. Right? So this was the one of the earliest theories of evolution which had surfaced. अच्छा, इसको debunk करने के लिए, इसको oppose करने के लिए, there was this guy called as Weizmann. I don't remember the first name right now. क्या फर्क पड़ता है? Anyway, NCERT में नहीं है तो problem नहीं है अपने को. Right? शुभम बोलते NCERT में है क्या? नहीं, तो corruption. तो जो बोलने का बोला सर. Now Weizmann said that नहीं ये ठीक नहीं लग रहा है मेरे को। बोले क्यों ठीक नहीं लग रहा है? बोले acquired क्या? वो बोले कि देखो बॉडी में दो टाइप के सेल होते हैं, एक सोमैटिक सेल होता है, एक जर्म सेल होता है। बोले जो कैरेक्टर नेक्स्ट जनरेशन में जाएगा वो जर्म सेल में होना चाहिए, और ये चेंज तुम जो बोल रहे हो किस में आ रहा है? सोमैटिक सेल में आ रहा है, तो जम नहीं रहा है। He even tried. He took a lab rat, right? ना उसका टेल काट दिया, बोले ये acquired character हो गया, बोले अभी तो उसका next generation should be born without a tail, right? 20 generation तक try किया, लेकिन every time the new mouse was born with a tail only. बोले नहीं ये टाइम पास है, फालतू, इसमें कुछ दम नहीं लग रहा है, बोले बुड्ढा पागल हो गया, okay? Right? So this was rejected. See, people at that time were just trying to put forth ideas how life must have progressed. That's why we find these kind of ridiculous ideas also. वो पैंसपर में भी बहुत मस्त आइडिया है एकदम, right ना? तो जिसके मन में जो आया वो डाल दिया है लोग ने. Okay, so this was the first idea which came. Are we clear about this, please? What is this? ठीक है? अब then is theory of natural selection. Now theory of natural selection, as we know, was given by Charles Darwin. Now Charles Darwin का जो पूरा story है, it starts on a ship called as HMS Beagle, right? इसका mention NCERT में है तो जरूरी है अपने लिए, right? HMS Beagle. See, Charles Darwin came from England, and England, you know, was a very powerful empire, right? History में शायद पढ़ा भी होगा, the sun never sets on the British Empire. That means they had colonies everywhere. So see, because they had colonies everywhere, na, they used to have a lot of trade, right? For example, India को बहुत चूसा लोग. India में there was a lot of cheap cotton available. Cotton was a very big, agricultural produce in our country. So they used to take cheap cotton from our country. They used to take it to England. They used to process it, make it cloth, and sell it at a higher rate again in India. So उसके लिए to bring तो ships का बहुत to and fro था. So there are a lot of trade ships, cargo ships going in and around the world. Now they had a rule that time that every time a ship used to sail, obviously उसके ports होते थे, they used to have stops also. So they used to have a naturalist on board. जहाँ भी शिप रुकेगा ना, वो एरिया को एक्सप्लोर करना, फ्लोरा एंड फौना देखना, नई डिस्कवरीज, तो ये उन लोगों का एक रूल था. तो HMS Beagle पे जो naturalist select हुआ था ना was Charles Darwin, and one of the stops which HMS Beagle made was the island of Galapagos, जहां पर उसके observations led to development of this theory. The book was titled as Origin of Species. Theory was called as natural selection. It was mentioned in a book which is called as Origin of Species. Right? Maybe we'll come to at a later date what he did there. ठीक है? एक छोटा fun fact. You know, on ships you have cadets. Cadets means जो लोग झाड़ू पोछा मारते हैं ना, clean the ships and flooring and all that. You know who was one of the persons who were झाड़ू पोछा मारने के लिए? Napoleon. On this ship. Anyways, छोड़ो. नेपोलियन में डार्विन और बुक में इतना नहीं लिखा हुआ है उनकी क्या बातें हुई, क्या प्लानिंग किया उन लोग ने. बोले यू रेवोल्यूशनाइज बायोलॉजी, आई रेवोल्यूशनाइज. नो नो, छोटा फन फैक्ट और कुछ नहीं. ओके, नाउ क्वेरीज. Now see, before we go into what is Darwin's theory, right? Darwin's theory in the NCERT, as we mentioned very badly, as expected. I don't expect anything new from them, right? But we will try to simplify it. थोड़ा सा पहले हम लोग NCERT से हटके इसका explanation देखते हैं कि भाई वो बोलना क्या चाह रहा है. Charles Darwin concluded that, सीधा conclusion, कुछ explanation कुछ नहीं, सीधा conclusion, right? Existing living forms share similarities. Whatever are the existing living forms, they share similarities. Not only among themselves, but also with the forms of life which existed millions of years ago. In one word, are they talking about a common ancestor? To put it in very simple words, right? जब चीजें एक ही जगह से originate हुई है, तो similarities तो होगी, right? एक ही चीज से दो अलग-अलग, तो दोनों के भी similarity है और पीछे भी similarity. So not only were there similarities between two existing life forms, but similarity with the life form which was existing millions of years ago also. So in one word, it is talking about common ancestor. Many such life forms do not exist anymore. There have been extinctions of different life forms in the years gone by. New forms of life have arisen at different periods in the history of Earth. So there has been a gradual evolution of life forms. Life forms का मतलब species. When we say gradual, gradual is a very key word for Darwin, because Darwin believes that the process of evolution is extremely slow, but definitely happening in every generation. You might not see it, it might not be overtly perceptible to us that evolution हुआ है, but definitely each and every generation is better than the previous one, and we see new forms evolving maybe after millions of years. So it is gradual evolution of life forms, slow and steady but directional. It definitely is happening. That is what the belief of Darwin was. Now, what was the theory of Darwin? Darwin ka theory was based on certain points. The first point that Darwin was more focused on was high rate of reproduction of all living organisms. Right? Darwin said that every organism has got high capacity to reproduce. High capacity to reproduce. High R value? What is R? Intrinsic rate of natural increase. याद आ रहा है कि नहीं? हाँ. तो बोले हर एक organism का high R value है, right? Even if you take the slowest of breeders, elephant का gestation period is 22 months. So it's a very slow breeder. The life expectancy of the elephant is also very high, 150 years. उसका जनरेशन खत्म होने को टाइम लगता है। मतलब अगर स्लोएस्ट ब्रीडर भी आप ले लो तो उसका भी आर वैल्यू ज्यादा है, राइट। डार्विन का मेन पॉइंट था फिटनेस ऑफ एन इंडिविजुअल, एंड बाय फिटनेस ही मेंट ओनली वन थिंग, रिप्रोडक्टिव फिटनेस। अकॉर्डिंग टू डार्विन, जिस ऑर्गेनिज्म का आर वैल्यू हाई है उसके नंबर ज्यादा है, वो ही सिलेक्ट होगा आगे जाके नेचर की तरफ से। जिसका आर वैल्यू कम है वो कब एक्सटिंक्ट हो जाएगा। तो ही ऑलवेज हार्प्ड ऑन हाई रेट ऑफ रिप्रोडक्शन। नाउ सेकेंड पॉइंट, ही वाज वंडरिंग व्हाट टू राइट। कुछ तो फेंकना पड़ेगा ना। नाउ he came across an essay by an economist by the name of T.R. Malthus. Please ध्यान से सुनना. This name is also mentioned ahead in the NCERT. Please, Thomas Malthus. Now Thomas Malthus कोई साइंटिस्ट नहीं था, वो इकोनॉमिस्ट था. He was writing an essay on populations, and he was comparing the growth of population to food production. दो चीजें क्या कंपेयर कर रहा था वो? पॉपुलेशन का रेट और ग्रोथ इन पॉपुलेशन, ग्रोथ इन फूड प्रोडक्शन. तो मैल्थस रोट वन स्टेटमेंट जो डार्विन को बहुत सही लगा. He says food production always increased in AP, arithmetic progression. ये पॉइंट मैंने मेंशन किया था. And populations always grow in HP. तो who is always ahead? Population is always ahead. तो ये पॉइंट उसने उठाया. Darwin picked up this point from T.R. Malthus का essay कि food production is always going to be behind. So that means food, space, क्या इसको हम लोग resources बोल सकते हैं? Space भी, food भी, ये सब resources है. तो ये जो है वो हमेशा क्या रहने वाली है? Limited रहेगी. आपके पास लोग ज्यादा है, रिसोर्सेज कम है, तो ऑब्वियसली इसका रिजल्ट क्या होगा? कंपटीशन होगा. कैन यू सी कितना लॉजिकल थियरी जा रहा है एकदम. अगर रिप्रोडक्टिव रेट हाई है, रिसोर्सेज लिमिटेड है, तो रिजल्ट क्या होगा इसका? कंपटीशन. कंपटीशन जो है वो तीन टाइप का होता है. या तो वो होगा इंट्रा स्पेसिफिक, इंटर स्पेसिफिक या एक्स्ट्रा स्पेसिफिक. Darwin was convinced that it is inter-specific competition which has a role in organic evolution. Chapter number 13, right hand side page, ऊपर वाला पैराग्राफ. ठीका मैंने ऐसे यार. जो भी है, लेकिन ये दिया हुआ है, बराबर ना? Which competition has played a inter-specific competition. So Darwin said that ये competition हुआ है. Now he went on to explain what is the idea of competition now. See, I am just trying to explain you Darwin's theory in my words, and then we'll go to what is written in the NCERT, trying to correlate. इसका मतलब ये होता है. Darwin says that in any population, कोई भी population ले लो आप. Let's say you take a population. अच्छा, when I use the term population, I need three characteristics to define it. Can somebody help me with that? Please raise your hand to answer the question. When can I call a group of people as population? Group of organisms as population. I need three characteristics to define. Chapter number 13.1, पहला point population का. Raise your hand. Raise your hand. Come on. Yes, Shivani, bolo.
Same species, they should be able to intervene.
One. I said three characteristics. Varun? In the same geographical area. Om?
They should have nearly similar
competing for the same.
They should share or compete for similar resources. Share क्यों? Resource sharing. Resource parts. है कि नहीं? So share or compete for similar resources. So a group should be in the same geographical area. It should share or compete for similar resources. And it should be able to interbreed. जब ये तीन characteristics satisfy हो गए, so that group of organism is called as a population. Darwin said that when you have a population, लेट्स से ये पॉपुलेशन है, मतलब इसमें जितने भी ऑर्गेनिज्म है सब सेम स्पीशीज है, ओके ना। अब ये पॉपुलेशन के लिए अपने पास रिसोर्स है, रिसोर्स फूड हो गया, रिसोर्स स्पेस हो गया, रिसोर्स क्लाइमेट हो गया, अवेलेबल, मतलब जो कोई भी उसके लाइफ के लिए जरूरी है उसका रिसोर्स हो गया, राइट। सो विल द ऑर्गेनिज्म हैव एन एबिलिटी टू यूटिलाइज द रिसोर्स, right? So will every organism have an ability to utilize the resource? Darwin says there will be difference in abilities. All the organisms will not have the same ability to utilize the resource in the same way. दो ऑर्गेनिज्म का एक रिसोर्स यूटिलाइज करने में डिफरेंस होगा, और इस डिफरेंस को बोलते हैं variation. What is the difference called as? Variation. Right? So, variation are the small minute differences between individuals of the same species. Right? See, variations are everywhere around us. Right? We are all members of the same species, yet different from each other. What differentiates us is variation. Acha, forget, we are all so unrelated to each other. Brother, sister? Yeah? Coming from the same parents, yet as different as chalk and cheese. Those who have siblings will identify with me. Yeah? The only place where a brother and sister agree is how to disagree. Right? अगर एक X बोलेगा दूसरा Y बोलना ही बोलना है 100%, just for the sake of it. So are they different? अच्छा, forget brothers, twins, identical, yet different from each other. बराबर ना? Different from each other. So variation is what defines us. So यहाँ पे Darwin is saying that कोई भी population, please towards the board please, we're talking about something very important. Darwin says that any population has got built-in variation. यानी सारे के सारे members रिसोर्स को एक जैसे यूटिलाइज नहीं कर सकते हैं। कुछ मेंबर्स के पास रिसोर्स को यूटिलाइज करने की कैरेक्टरिस्टिक ज्यादा होगी, किसी के पास कम होगी। सो वी से वेरिएशंस आर ऑफ टू टाइप्स, फेवरेबल वेरिएशंस, अनफेवरेबल वेरिएशंस। सो नाउ टेल मी, हाउ विल फेवरेबल वेरिएशन हेल्प एन ऑर्गेनिज्म? रिसोर्स का यूटिलाइजेशन बेटर होगा। अगर रिसोर्स का यूटिलाइजेशन बेटर होगा तो उसकी आर वैल्यू ज्यादा होगी। अगर अनफेवरेबल वेरिएशन है तो रिसोर्स का यूटिलाइजेशन बेटर नहीं होगा, उसकी आगे जाके आर वैल्यू कम हो जाएगी। जिसका आर वैल्यू ज्यादा होगा वो प्रोजेनी ज्यादा छोड़ेगा, उसको नेचर सिलेक्ट करे। आ रहे समझ में थियरीज का भी ना? इट इज ऑल अबाउट द एबिलिटी टू यूटिलाइज रिसोर्स, वेदर इट इज फेवरेबल और अनफेवरेबल। यहां पे आके उसका थियरी अटक गया। यहां तक एकदम ब्रिलियंट, उसमें एब्सोल्युटली ब्रिलियंट थी। भाई एक छोटे आदमी ने खड़े होकर पूछ लिया कि भाई ये थियरी इज वेरी ब्रिलियंट, ये वेरिएशन आया कहां से? सिंपल क्वेश्चन ना एकदम, वेरिएशन आया कहां से? मतलब कैसे पॉसिबल है कि दो ऑर्गेनिज्म है, एक में फेवरेबल है एक में अनफेवरेबल है? तो वो नेचर ने डाल दिया। Right? So only nature is. So that's why the theory came to be known as theory of natural selection. बोले nature is selecting for fitness. Nature is selecting for fitness. Right? So ये adaptive ability कौन देता है? Nature देता है. That's why the theory was called as theory of natural selection. Right? So when this happens, right? दो members है, एक के पास फेवरेबल वेरिएशन है, एक के पास अनफेवरेबल वेरिएशन है। सो फेवरेबल वेरिएशन वाला रिसोर्स को अच्छी तरह यूटिलाइज करेगा, उसका आर वैल्यू बढ़ेगा, उसकी प्रोजेनी का नंबर बढ़ेगा। तो उस जनरेशन में चेंजेस आते जाएंगे एंड ग्रेजुअली यू विल हैव फॉर्मेशन ऑफ न्यूअर लाइफ फॉर्म्स। सो स्पीशिएशन वहां से आएगा फिर, एंड जो अनफेवरेबल है वो एक्सटिंक्ट हो जाएगा। द लाइफ फॉर्म्स विल गेट एक्सटिंक्ट नाउ। Are you getting the gist of Darwin's theory now? Right? Now, against this explanation, we'll try to read what the NCERT has given. right? The NCERT has not mentioned like this, right? In its own peculiar way. Okay, let's see. Any population has built-in variation in characteristics. Is this sentence understood, please? Any population has got built-in variation. What is variation? Ability to utilize resources. उसमें difference आ जाएगा. Those characteristics. We are talking about variation in characteristics. Those characteristics which enable some to survive better. So which are those characteristics? Favorable or unfavorable? Favorable. Are you getting this now, please? Would outbreed others. What do you mean by outbreed others? High R value. यानी उनका rate of reproduction would be high. So जिसके पास favorable variation होगा, उसका R value ज़्यादा रहेगा, उसका reproductive rate ज़्यादा रहेगा. Then those which are less endowed. What is less endowed now? Unfavorable variation. Please, are you understanding the meaning of the statement, please? I wish they would give more simple ways. ये statement समझ में आ रहा है? Against this explanation now, please. हाँ, नीमा? समझ में आया? Please. Okay. Another word used is fitness of the individual. Fitness, according to Darwin, refers ultimately and only to reproductive fitness. Those who are better fit in an environment. Now, इसका मतलब क्या हो गया? Those who are better fit. Those who have got higher R value. Those who are better fit. Fitness का मतलब क्या है? Reproductive rate. So those who are better fit in an environment will leave more progeny. These therefore will survive more and hence are selected by nature. He called it natural selection and implied it as a mechanism of evolution. He called it as natural selection and he said this is the mechanism, this is the way evolution is occurring. Lamarck ने क्या बोला था? Use and disuse. Right? He says no, it is natural selection which is allowing evolution. Okay, एक छोटा सा mention किया है about Mr. Alfred Wallace. Alfred Wallace also was a naturalist who was working in Malay archipelago. Malay means a group of islands actually. It's a group of islands. Now he was also having very similar views as Darwin and they had a lot of correspondence also about their views and a lot of points of Alfred Wallace were incorporated in the theory of Darwin, but unfortunately history ने सिर्फ डार्विन को याद रखा. Alfred Wallace बेचारा डूब